The wind cut across the dusty road, carrying the scent of dry earth and distant hay. She tightened her worn coat around her shoulders, counting her money for the 100th time that morning. $300. Every cent she had left, and the weight of it pressed on her chest like a stone. The town was quiet, but not empty. Neighbors whispered from porches and behind half-closed shutters, eyes following her every move. She could feel their judgment before they even spoke, could hear the silent accusations hanging in the air. Everyone thought she was foolish. Everyone thought she would waste what little she had. She paused at the edge of the pasture, her eyes scanning the small cluster of animals huddled near the fence. Most were well-fed and content, but one figure caught her attention immediately. A foal, barely more than a few months old, crouched low to the ground, ribs pressing against thin skin, eyes wide with hunger and fear. The sight twisted her stomach. It was hard to imagine how something so small, so fragile, could have survived alone, hidden in the outskirts of the ranch. And yet there it was, trembling in the cold morning air. People in town would call her reckless if they saw her now. They would shake their heads, muttering about how foolish it was to spend her last money on a starving horse. They didn't understand. They had never stood in the shadow of suffering and felt the pull of responsibility like she did. Every instinct in her body screamed that she could not leave this foal to its fate. It was a decision that would change everything, though she did not yet know how. The whispers of the town pressed in from all sides, a chorus of judgment she could not escape. But she pushed it aside. She had made up her mind. The foal's breathing was shallow, each tiny puff of air like a fragile flame struggling against the wind. She knelt down slowly, careful not to frighten it, and held out her hand. The little creature flinched but did not run. Hunger and weakness had left it no choice. She whispered softly, words that had no audience but themselves. "It's all right. I'm not going to hurt you." There was something in its eyes, a flicker of trust, and it was enough to make her heart pound. She could feel a bond forming, delicate but unbreakable, born of need and understanding. As she approached the ranch owner, heart hammering in her chest, she felt the weight of every eye in the small town on her back. The owner raised an eyebrow, surprise mixing with suspicion as she laid down the money. $300 for a horse most would have left to starve. The stall in the back seemed to loom larger than life, shadows stretching across the barn walls as if judging her alongside the people outside. She felt the sting of every skeptical glance, every whispered word, but the foal's weak whinny broke through the tension like a small, fragile cry for help. She handed over the money without hesitation. The town was ready with their assumptions. "Can't be her own money," someone said, voice laced with scorn. "She's desperate and foolish," another added. She heard it all, standing there, calm on the outside but heart thrumming with uncertainty. What they could not see, what they would never understand, was the quiet urgency that had driven her forward. Money was a small thing when weighed against life. She knew it in her bones, and she knew she had no choice but to act. The foal's legs wobbled as she guided it into a small stall prepared in haste. She wrapped a blanket around its shivering body and offered it a bucket of water and some feed. Its thin lips grazed the food cautiously, then hungrily, and she felt relief wash over her. The decision was right. The people could judge all they wanted, but here, in this quiet moment, truth was simple. The foal needed her, and she had answered. Yet, even as she worked to care for it, she could sense that this was only the beginning. Something about the foal felt unusual, more than fragile and hungry. There was intelligence in its eyes, a spark that did not belong to a typical young horse. She caught herself watching it, noting how it observed her movements with a keen awareness, how it reacted to sounds in the barn before she could even perceive them. It was as if the foal understood more than its age should allow, and the realization made her uneasy and curious at the same time. Outside, the town continued to murmur. She could hear the faint cadence of disapproval even as she worked, the faint echo of conversations about how someone could waste their last money on a starving animal. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others whispered about madness. She imagined what they would say tomorrow, if they learned the truth or if they ever learned it at all. She didn't care. Right now, nothing mattered more than the foal's trembling body warming against her hands. Nothing mattered more than its fragile life being held in trust. The barn smelled of hay and dust, of sweat and earth, a scent that reminded her of countless mornings spent tending to animals in simpler times. She had grown up with horses, with the rhythm of life and work on small parcels of land, and she had learned the silent language of trust between human and animal. But this foal, thin, frightened, yet with a strange glint of strength, challenged everything she thought she knew. The work ahead would be long and uncertain. People would continue to judge. And yet she felt a stubborn conviction that she had done the right thing, even if it meant standing alone against the town's whispers. The foal shifted, nuzzling her shoulder with a weak but persistent determination. It had survived on instinct and whatever scraps it could find, but now it was in her care. She felt a fierce protectiveness rise within her. The $300 she had spent seemed small against the cost of losing this life, small against the mystery that hung over the foal. There was something remarkable hidden beneath its ribs and thin coat, something that she could not yet understand, something that would soon reveal itself. Night fell, and the barn grew quiet, shadows dancing across the walls as lantern light flickered. The foal lay down, exhausted, but eyes still bright with an unusual intelligence. She sat nearby, heart heavy with concern but also with a strange anticipation. The town's judgment felt distant here, replaced by the pressing reality of survival and care. Every sound, the soft whinny, the rustling of straw, the creak of the barn door held weight. Something was coming, something that would shift the town's perception, something that would turn disbelief into awe. She thought about the whispers that would follow, the knowing looks, the raised eyebrows of neighbors and strangers alike, but even in their doubt she felt a quiet certainty. Life had brought her here, to this moment, to this choice, and in that choice lay the truth, one that could not be questioned once revealed. She did not yet know how it would unfold, or what secrets the foal held, but she knew the story was far from over. The night was long, and the questions would grow louder, but in the small, dimly lit barn, she had a promise of hope in the shape of a trembling, starving foal. The air outside was heavy with silence, broken only by the occasional clop of hooves or distant wind through the trees. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, feeling the foal's small, fragile heartbeat against her chest, and allowed herself a slow breath. The $300 were gone, spent on a life that others dismissed as worthless, but she had gained something far greater, a connection, a responsibility, and the undeniable sense that the truth would not remain hidden for long. Soon, the whispers of judgment would be replaced with astonishment, and the foal would show the world the remarkable resilience that lay within its fragile frame. She looked down at the small creature, its eyes meeting hers with an intensity that belied its weakness. In that gaze she saw strength, determination, and the hint of a story yet to unfold. The town might scoff, neighbors might shake their heads, but she knew what she had done was right. And somewhere deep inside, she felt a quiet thrill of anticipation. The foal had survived against all odds, and now, under her care, the truth was waiting to rise from the shadows, waiting to astonish everyone who had doubted her judgment, waiting to reveal a miracle born from desperation, courage, and heart. She stayed there, in the barn, the night stretching endlessly around them, holding the foal close, knowing that the coming days would test them both. There would be challenges, hardships, and more doubt from the people outside, but in this moment, all that mattered was survival and the promise of what was yet to come. The foal shifted slightly, settling closer, and she felt the first flicker of hope that would carry them through the trials ahead. And as the lantern light danced across the barn walls, she whispered softly, more to herself than anyone else, "We'll show them. They'll see the truth." Morning came slowly, golden light spilling across the worn wooden beams of the barn. She stirred, careful not to startle the foal curled beside her. Its breathing was steadier now, more regular than the previous night, but its body was still frail, limbs trembling with weakness. She had spent hours feeding it, offering water, brushing away dirt and hay, and whispering soft words of reassurance. Every small victory, the foal standing, nuzzling her hand, taking a hesitant sip of water, felt monumental. She understood that survival would not be easy, but the bond forming between them was undeniable, and it gave her the strength to continue despite exhaustion. The townspeople had already begun to whisper. By the time she opened the barn door to feed the chickens, she could hear muted voices carried on the morning wind. "Can't believe she spent all that money on that skinny horse," one neighbor muttered. "What a waste," said another. Even in their doubt, she felt a strange sense of resolve. Let them talk. They did not understand what it meant to look at a life and see possibility rather than despair. She knew that there was more to the foal than anyone suspected, though she could not yet explain it. Something about its eyes, its alertness, its subtle movements suggested intelligence and awareness beyond its age. As the day wore on, she began to uncover traces of the foal's past. Small scars on its legs, hints of muscle memory in the way it moved, and an instinctive caution around sudden movements hinted that it had survived a life of hardship long before she found it. It was clear this was not just a fragile, starving animal, it was one that had endured more than most could imagine. And yet, it still trusted her, a fragile thread of faith that she could not take lightly. She felt responsibility settle on her shoulders like a heavy cloak, pressing her to act with care and diligence at every turn. The neighbors' judgment did not abate. They observed her every movement, suspicious eyes peeking over fences or through half-closed shutters. Some whispered about how foolish she was, how she had thrown away the last of her money for no gain. Others muttered about what the foal might be hiding, as if animals could conceal secrets from those willing to care. And yet she knew there was truth in what she had done, a quiet validation that would become apparent in time. Every small act of care, every feeding, every gentle word reinforced the bond between her and the foal, preparing them both for what lay ahead. By midday she had managed to prepare a small space in the barn for the foal, a corner with fresh straw, water, and food arranged with care. The foal wandered slowly into the space, eyes wide and cautious, yet drawn to her presence. It sniffed at the water and nibbled the feed, hesitant at first, then with growing confidence. She knelt beside it, brushing the thin coat and murmuring softly, "You're safe now. No one's going to hurt you." Its ears flicked in response, tail brushing lightly against her leg. She felt a strange mixture of relief and anticipation, relief that it had survived. Anticipation of the truth she sensed lay hidden beneath its frail frame. She began to notice subtle behaviors that unsettled and intrigued her at the same time. The foal would respond to distant sounds she barely perceived, move toward water sources before she could point them out, and observe her actions with a sharpness that seemed out of place for one so young. She paused often, watching it, wondering if she imagined these signs or if the foal truly possessed something extraordinary. The thought both thrilled and worried her. If anyone discovered what she was noticing, they might call her foolish or worse. Yet she could not ignore the evidence in front of her. The foal's awareness and instincts were remarkable, almost uncanny. In the afternoon, she ventured beyond the barn to check the surrounding pastures. The foal followed cautiously, steps careful and measured, yet always returning her glance with a watchful gaze. She found broken fencing, scattered hay, and signs of neglect that explained why the foal had been left to starve. It was a harsh, unforgiving landscape, and she felt a twinge of anger mixed with sorrow. How many other animals had suffered unnoticed, left to survive on scraps and instinct? But even in this harshness she saw hope. The foal had endured, and now, with her help, it had a chance to recover. When she returned to the barn, she found a few neighbors lingering nearby, still whispering. One of them called out, "Are you sure that little thing is going to make it? Looks like a bag of bones to me." She straightened slowly, meeting the skeptical gaze without fear. "It will survive," she said quietly but firmly. "It's stronger than you think." The neighbors exchanged doubtful glances, muttering among themselves, but she ignored them. The foal's eyes met hers again, bright and alert, and in that moment she knew she was right. Survival was not measured by strength alone, but by determination, care, and the will to endure. Evening brought a quiet stillness to the barn. Shadows stretched across the walls, the light of the lantern flickering softly. She sat beside the foal, brushing its mane, feeling the warmth of life slowly returning to its body. Each movement was deliberate, careful, and filled with patience. She reflected on the past few days, the judgment, the whispers, the weight of her last $300, and realized that nothing mattered except the life she was nurturing in front of her. The townspeople would see the truth soon enough, but for now, she focused on small victories, standing, eating, responding to her voice. Each was a step toward recovery, each a sign that resilience was taking root. The foal began to show more confidence as days passed. It walked further, tested its legs, and even attempted a few playful kicks in the hay. Her heart lifted with every small display of vitality. Yet she could not shake the feeling that this foal was extraordinary, that there was more to it than mere survival. She watched it closely, noting how it reacted to sudden sounds, how it seemed to understand her movements, even anticipating her gestures. It was as if it possessed a quiet intelligence, a spark that would soon reveal itself in a way she could not yet imagine. At night, the barn settled into silence. She lay nearby, listening to the soft breathing of the foal, feeling the rhythm of life that she had fought so hard to preserve. Her mind wandered to the townspeople's judgment, the gossip that had followed her from the moment she spent her last dollars. They could not see what she saw, the determination in the foal's eyes, the resilience in its movements, the promise of something remarkable waiting to unfold. She whispered softly, almost as if speaking to the foal, "They'll see. Soon they'll understand." Days stretched into weeks, and the foal continued to recover, growing stronger with each passing moment. Its legs gained muscle, coat filled out, and eyes shone with a brightness that hinted at the extraordinary. She kept careful notes, observed patterns, and marveled at every display of intelligence. Sometimes it would approach her before she called it, anticipate her actions, or react to unseen dangers. Each display fueled her conviction that this foal was unlike any other she had encountered, and that the judgments of the townspeople were not just premature, they were blind to the truth. Even as she cared for the foal, the question of its past lingered. How had it survived alone? Who had left it to starve? What hidden strength allowed it to endure the neglect and hunger that would have felled a lesser animal? The mystery gnawed at her, a persistent whisper in the back of her mind. And though she worked tirelessly, preparing feed, cleaning stalls, and rebuilding fences, she knew that the full story was yet to reveal itself. Something extraordinary was waiting in the foal's future, something that would change the way everyone saw it, and her. Each evening she lingered beside it, feeling the connection deepen, a silent understanding passing between them. She realized that the foal's recovery was not just physical, it was emotional, a bond of trust and shared survival that grew stronger with every day. The town's judgment still loomed, but it felt distant now, almost irrelevant. She had made her choice, and the foal had made its own, trusting her with its fragile life. In that trust lay the promise of truth, waiting to emerge from the shadows of suspicion and fear. And as she watched the foal settle into a quiet rest, she knew that the next stage of their journey was about to begin. The mystery of its past, the extraordinary intelligence she had glimpsed, and the town's disbelief all formed a tension that hung over the barn like the night sky. Something remarkable was coming, and she felt it in her bones. The foal's fate and the truth would soon be revealed, but for now she could only wait, care, and prepare for the moment when the world would finally see what she already knew, that life, when nurtured with courage and compassion, could survive against all odds. The days grew warmer, yet the tension in town seemed to linger like a stubborn fog. She went about her routine, caring for the foal with unwavering attention, yet the whispers never ceased. From the windows of the general store to the corners of the saloon, people questioned her choices. "Spending your last $300 on that thing. She's lost her mind," someone muttered. Another voice added, "It's only a foal. Let it die and be done with it." She heard them, but their doubts were distant echoes compared to the pressing reality in the barn. She could see the truth in the foal's eyes, and that truth demanded action, demanded patience, demanded vigilance. Each day the foal grew stronger, but it also began to show signs that were unusual for one so young. It reacted to distant noises before anyone could perceive them, turning its head toward threats long before the humans noticed. At times, it would move with deliberate care to avoid unstable ground or broken planks, as though it had an understanding beyond instinct. She started noting these behaviors, writing them in a small leather journal she kept tucked away, fearing what people might say if they saw her observations. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The foal was remarkable, and its intelligence was only just beginning to reveal itself. Meanwhile, the townspeople's judgment began to take shape in more overt ways. A few neighbors came to the barn, ostensibly to check on her, but their scrutiny was thinly veiled suspicion. One man leaned against the fence, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the foal. "You sure that thing isn't going to collapse on you one day?" he asked with a smirk. She smiled politely, refusing to rise to anger. "It's healthy now and growing stronger every day," she said, her voice calm but firm. The man's eyebrows lifted in skepticism, but he said nothing more, retreating with a muttered comment about fools and their pets. The foal's behavior continued to draw her attention. At times, it would follow her into the fields, stopping to watch her carefully as she repaired fences or tended the smaller animals. It seemed to anticipate her actions, moving to clear a patch of grass or nudge debris aside before she even reached it. At first she thought she was imagining it, the exhaustion from days of hard work and worry playing tricks on her mind. But each instance reinforced the reality. This foal had a rare kind of awareness, a presence that demanded recognition and respect. One afternoon she discovered another challenge. A section of the barn roof had begun to sag, weakened by rainwater pooling in the previous week. She knew she had to act quickly to prevent a collapse, but the foal would not leave her side. It pawed at the ground, shifted nervously, and occasionally whinnied, drawing her attention to the weakest points before she could spot them herself. The neighbors had watched from a distance, shaking their heads at what they considered unnecessary attention to a simple animal, but she knew the foal had saved her from injury more than once with its acute awareness. It was almost as though it understood danger in ways humans could not. Word of the foal's unusual behavior began to spread quietly, despite the town's judgment. A few curious children sneaked to the barn to watch, whispering among themselves about the way it moved, the way it seemed to know things. She kept them at a respectful distance, allowing them to see without touching, wary of what gossip might become if word reached the wrong ears. Still, she felt a quiet thrill at the notion that others were beginning to notice what she already knew. This was no ordinary foal. There was something extraordinary waiting to reveal itself, and she felt the pull of anticipation with every passing day. The nights were the hardest. She would lie on the straw beside the foal, listening to the distant sounds of the town and the subtle shifts in the barn. Sometimes she thought she saw shadows moving along the walls, yet the foal always responded first, ears flicking, head turning, muscles tensing in ways that suggested awareness far beyond instinct. Her mind raced with questions. Where had it come from? How had it survived alone for so long? What secrets did it carry within its small, trembling body? The more she observed, the deeper her curiosity grew, and the stronger the sense of impending revelation became. Meanwhile, the townspeople's whispers took a darker turn. Some began questioning whether she was hiding something, speculating that the foal might be dangerous or bring misfortune. "Strange things happen when folks meddle with animals like that," one elderly neighbor muttered. "Mark my words, it won't end well." She ignored them, focusing on the care and training of the foal, determined to shield it from harm and nurture the bond that had grown so quickly. The fear and judgment from others only strengthened her resolve. She had spent her last money, risked her reputation, and committed herself fully to this creature's survival. There was no turning back. In the quiet moments between work and care, she began to notice subtler patterns. The foal responded to her moods, calming when she was tense, playful when she smiled. It seemed to understand human emotion in a way that few animals did. At times she caught it staring intently at certain objects in the barn-broken beams, piles of hay, even her own tools, and she began to suspect that it was learning, observing, perhaps even problem-solving. Her journal filled with notes, how it reacted to light, sound, movement, and even the presence of other animals. Each entry deepened her understanding and her wonder, and each moment of insight seemed to bring them closer together. Tensions in town escalated as some began to suspect there was more to the foal than met the eye. Rumors circulated that she was hiding a rare breed or that the animal had unusual strength or abilities. The gossip reached the ears of the sheriff, who came to investigate, ostensibly to ensure nothing illegal was occurring. She welcomed him to the barn, demonstrating the foal's routine feeding and care. The foal observed him warily, yet made no aggressive movements, and she noticed the sheriff's eyebrows lift in surprise. He had come expecting trouble, but he saw nothing but a healthy, intelligent young animal, nurtured with care and patience. Still, she could sense the curiosity in his eyes, a silent acknowledgment that the foal might be something extraordinary. Her life became a delicate balance of tending to the foal, fending off judgment, and protecting the secrets that seemed to cling to the animal. Every day brought new challenges: fixing fences, repairing water troughs, cleaning stalls, and ensuring the foal's continued recovery. Yet even amidst the hard work, there was a quiet joy, an understanding that she was part of something remarkable. She could feel the foal's intelligence growing, a subtle but unmistakable awareness that would soon reveal itself in ways neither she nor the town could ignore. She also began to notice changes in herself. Her patience deepened, her instincts sharpened, and she found a strength she hadn't realized she possessed. Caring for the foal was not merely about survival, it was about learning, adapting, and understanding life in a more profound way. She reflected on her last $300, spent in desperation but yielding a reward far beyond money, the trust and companionship of an extraordinary creature. Each day the bond strengthened, the lessons multiplied, and the foal's presence began to transform her entire world. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, the foal suddenly stiffened. Ears pricked, head raised, eyes focused on a shadowy corner of the barn. She watched, breath held, as the foal moved deliberately toward the source of its attention. It pawed at the ground, sniffed the air, and whinnied softly. Her heart raced. Something had caught its attention, something hidden from human eyes. She stepped closer, cautious but trusting the foal's instincts, aware that this moment might reveal secrets long buried. For a moment time seemed to slow, the air thick with anticipation, the barn holding its breath along with her. The townspeople continued their quiet speculation outside, unaware of the tension building within the barn. She knew that when the truth finally emerged, it would astonish them, overturn assumptions, and silence the whispers that had followed her since she had spent her last money. But until that moment arrived, the foal's secret remained locked, a puzzle waiting to be solved, and the sense of suspense deepened with every passing hour. Every flick of its ears, every deliberate movement hinted at intelligence, awareness, and something extraordinary just beyond her understanding. And so the days continued. She cared for the foal with unwavering attention, guided by instinct, observation, and growing admiration. She documented every behavior, every unusual movement, every hint of intelligence, knowing that the story of this animal and of her choice was far from complete. The judgment of the townspeople, the curiosity of outsiders, and the mysterious abilities of the foal all formed a web of tension and anticipation. Every moment in the barn carried weight, every glance exchanged with the foal a silent question. What would it reveal next, and when would the world finally understand? Even as the foal grew stronger, healthier, and more aware, the central mystery remained. Why had it been abandoned, and what extraordinary qualities had allowed it to survive? She felt certain that the answers were close, that the next revelation would change everything. And in that certainty there was hope, a hope that carried them both forward, past judgment, past fear, and into a future where the truth would finally shine, waiting to astonish the town and vindicate her choice. The barn was quiet, the air heavy with the scent of hay and the faint trace of rain that had passed the night before. She moved carefully among the stalls, checking on the foal, who had become more alert and stronger each day, yet still possessed that fragile, uncertain energy that drew both her worry and admiration. Its eyes followed her every movement, not with the simple curiosity of a young horse, but with a keen awareness that unsettled and fascinated her in equal measure. She felt certain that something remarkable was waiting to emerge from within it, though she could not predict when or what form it would take. The town had grown restless, whispers circulating more loudly than ever. Some people were convinced the foal was dangerous, others that it was miraculous, though none had yet seen the truth for themselves. She ignored the gossip, focusing instead on the careful care that had become her daily routine: checking water, feeding hay, ensuring the foal's muscles strengthened without strain, and monitoring its responses to her commands and the world around it. Every day seemed to reveal another layer of its intelligence and instinct for caution, an ability to sense unseen dangers, even an understanding of her own moods and intentions. One afternoon, a group of townsfolk gathered near the edge of the pasture, ostensibly to observe from a distance, though their intent was clear: to judge, to confirm that she had wasted her last $300 on a worthless animal. She watched them silently from the barn doorway, foal at her side, muscles tense but calm. The animals around them, chickens, goats, and even the barn cats, paused in their movements, as if aware of the tension radiating through the air. The foal's ears twitched, eyes narrowing as it studied the humans. She felt a thrill of anticipation, knowing that the foal was aware of their presence and would respond in ways that might astonish everyone. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the yard, the foal moved with precision, circling the approaching neighbors with careful steps, its movements deliberate, almost protective. She realized that it had understood the danger before she could react. The humans stopped in their tracks, startled by the animal's assertiveness, though they could not yet comprehend the depth of its awareness. Their murmurs rose, speculation and fear mixing with awe as they tried to predict what the foal might do next. She stood beside it, heart pounding, knowing that the moment was approaching when its extraordinary abilities would become undeniable. The foal led her to a broken fence, one that threatened the safety of the other animals. She had not noticed it earlier, distracted as she had been by the visitors outside. It pawed at the ground near the weak point, then stepped back and whinnied, looking at her with that strange intensity she had come to trust. She understood immediately. It wanted her to repair the fence before disaster struck. Hands shaking slightly, she moved to follow its guidance, realizing that the foal's instincts were faster and more precise than her own, anticipating dangers she had overlooked. The neighbors whispered among themselves, all beginning to mix with skepticism. Suddenly, a shadow crossed the barnyard, a stray dog from the edge of town, eyes glinting, moving toward the foal. The foal's muscles tensed, ears pricked, and it positioned itself between the dog and the other animals. She froze, watching, heart in her throat, as it stood its ground, gaze locked on the intruder. Then, almost imperceptibly, it shifted, a low nicker warning the dog to stay back. The dog hesitated, then retreated, and the humans gasped, realizing that this was not an ordinary foal. The barn seemed to hold its breath as she stepped closer, placing her hand on its neck, feeling the calm strength radiating from it. That evening she sat with the foal in the barn, reflecting on the day's events. Its unusual behaviors had escalated, showing not only awareness but leadership, even courage. The townspeople's whispers had become louder, a mixture of awe and disbelief. They had witnessed its intelligence and instinct firsthand, yet no one could explain it. She thought back to the moment she had spent her last $300, judged by every eye in town, and felt a quiet vindication. The foal had proven itself capable, its actions undeniable, but the full truth was still waiting to emerge. Over the next few days the tension grew. The foal continued to demonstrate remarkable abilities, guiding her away from hazards, alerting her to dangers she had overlooked, and even interacting with the other animals in ways that strengthened the entire barn's dynamic. Neighbors continued to watch, some drawn by curiosity, others by skepticism. Rumors spread. Some said it was a rare breed with extraordinary instincts. Others whispered that it had been trained by someone of skill and cunning. Yet she knew none of these theories captured the truth. The foal's intelligence was innate, remarkable in a way that could not be taught or explained by ordinary means. One afternoon, a sudden thunderstorm rolled in from the west, dark clouds blotting out the sun and rain lashing the barnyard. The wind tore at fences and shook loose debris, and the townspeople scattered, seeking shelter. She rushed to secure the animals, but the foal's actions guided her, moving decisively to lead frightened goats and chickens into safer areas. She followed, astonished by its awareness of both the storm and the needs of the others. Even as the barn creaked and shivered, she felt a quiet confidence. With the foal by her side, she understood that they would survive this, though the danger and the revelation of its abilities was only growing more urgent. The storm passed as quickly as it arrived, leaving the air thick with the scent of wet earth and the distant rumble of thunder fading into the hills. The barnyard was scattered with debris, and one of the fence posts had been uprooted. She began clearing the damage, but the foal moved ahead, alerting her to spots she would have missed: a sharp branch leaning precariously, a loose board that threatened to fall, a patch of mud too slippery for the smaller animals. Its movements were precise, almost purposeful, and she realized that its intelligence was no longer subtle. The town had yet to see the full extent of it, but she knew the climax was near, something that would astonish everyone and prove beyond doubt that her choice to spend her last $300 had been more than justified. As night fell, the foal refused to settle. It paced the barn floor, ears pricked, tail flicking, eyes darting to the shadows. She followed its gaze, noticing movement beyond the barn doors, a group of men approaching, their purpose unclear. Panic prickled her skin, but the foal stood firm, positioning itself between her and the intruders. Its muscles tensed, eyes shining with intelligence and resolve. She understood immediately that this was the moment she had been preparing for. The barn, the animals, and the foal's hidden abilities would all converge, revealing truths that the town had doubted, questioning everything they thought they knew. The men drew closer, voices low, and she could hear them debating. "It's only a horse," one said. "She's lost her mind spending that money. Let's go before we get involved in more trouble." But the foal did not retreat. It stepped forward, head high, hooves planted firmly, its gaze unyielding. She felt her pulse quicken, knowing that this confrontation would force the town, even in absentia, to acknowledge the foal's courage, intelligence, and strength. Whatever had been hidden for weeks, the mystery that had kept her awake nights, was about to be revealed in a way no one could ignore. She took a deep breath, hand on the foal's neck, feeling the heat and steady pulse beneath her palm. She whispered softly, "Now, show them." And the foal responded with a movement so precise, so deliberate, that she knew it was ready. The night air seemed to thicken, carrying the tension of anticipation and fear, of judgment and vindication, of survival and revelation. The storm had tested them, the town had doubted them, and now the foal's extraordinary abilities were poised to change everything. The shadowed figures paused at the barn entrance, uncertainty flickering across their faces. The foal shifted slightly, ears forward, muscles taut, eyes blazing with awareness and intelligence that no one had anticipated. She felt the electricity of the moment, the convergence of risk, judgment, and truth. The culmination of weeks of care, observation, and unwavering belief in this fragile creature was about to be tested in a way that would leave no doubt, no room for disbelief. The climax was near, and the barn, the storm, the town, and the foal itself held their collective breath, waiting for the revelation that would astonish everyone and vindicate her choices once and for all. The night hung heavy over the barnyard, shadows stretching long across the soaked ground, and the air was thick with tension. She held the foal close, feeling the heat of its body and the steady pulse beneath its thin coat. The intruders had paused at the edge of the barn, their movements hesitant, their voices uncertain. The foal's gaze remained steady, ears pricked, muscles taut, as if it understood something far beyond the human's comprehension. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "We've come this far. Now it's time." With a sudden, decisive movement, the foal stepped forward, positioning itself between her and the approaching men. Its eyes glimmered with awareness and courage, and she realized the truth that had been growing within her heart all along. This creature was extraordinary. It was not just a fragile, starving foal. It was strong, intelligent, and resilient in ways that defied expectation. She felt a surge of pride and relief as she watched it act, knowing that the weeks of care, patience, and unwavering belief had led to this moment. The men stopped, uncertain, their earlier confidence waning as they took in the foal's bold stance. One of them muttered, "It's not like any horse I've ever seen." The others nodded, murmurs of astonishment replacing their earlier derision. The foal's courage and awareness had forced them to reassess everything they thought they knew about it, and about her. She stepped forward slightly, hand resting gently on the foal's neck, feeling the warmth and strength that radiated from its body. The connection between them was undeniable, a bond formed through trust, compassion, and shared struggle. The storm that had passed days earlier had left the barnyard in disarray, but the foal now moved with precision and confidence, guiding her as she repaired fences and secured loose boards. Its intelligence shone in the way it anticipated hazards, nudged animals to safety, and even responded to her subtle gestures. The neighbors and intruders alike watched in awe, realizing that this foal was unlike any they had ever encountered. The whispers of doubt that had followed her for weeks faded, replaced by quiet respect and astonishment. As the hours passed, she began to address the questions that had lingered in her mind since she first rescued the foal. Where had it come from? How had it survived alone? The subtle signs of past hardship were still visible, small scars on its legs, hints of malnourishment, but there was no mistaking its innate intelligence and resilience. She gently ran her hands along its coat, marveling at how far it had come, and knew that the town would soon understand the full story. This foal had endured neglect and hunger, survived against odds, and emerged stronger and wiser than anyone could have imagined. By the next morning, the townspeople had gathered, drawn by stories of the foal's remarkable abilities. Mothers held their children back, neighbors whispered in disbelief, and even the sheriff approached with a mixture of caution and curiosity. She led the foal into the open yard, allowing everyone to witness what she had nurtured. The foal moved gracefully, muscles rippling beneath a now healthy coat, ears flicking attentively to every sound, eyes bright with intelligence. It approached the other animals calmly, guiding them, and then returned to her side, nuzzling her gently. The crowd gasped, some stepping closer, unable to believe what they saw. People's doubts slowly transformed into admiration. Those who had once criticized her now watched with a mixture of awe and respect. Children reached out to touch the foal under careful supervision, and neighbors asked questions, eager to understand how such a young creature could exhibit such intelligence and instinct. She answered patiently, explaining the care, attention, and trust that had allowed the foal to grow and recover. Every word reinforced the truth that she had known all along. Life, when nurtured with patience and compassion, could flourish even under the harshest conditions. The foal's extraordinary abilities became more apparent with each passing day. It responded to subtle cues, anticipated movements, and even demonstrated problem-solving skills when obstacles arose. She had feared judgment and ridicule, yet now the barn was filled with quiet wonder and appreciation. The bond between them had become a symbol of resilience, determination, and the extraordinary outcomes that could arise from acts of kindness. People who had once doubted her vision now marveled at the results, and she felt a deep sense of vindication tempered by humility and gratitude. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the moment she spent her last $300 on a starving foal. The risk had seemed immense, the judgment from the town relentless, and the uncertainty suffocating. Yet every hardship, every sleepless night, and every whispered doubt had led to this outcome. The foal had not only survived, it had thrived. And, in doing so, it had revealed the power of courage, compassion, and unwavering belief in something greater than oneself. The stormy nights and harsh days had tested them both, but the foal's resilience had been undeniable. It had endured hunger, fear, and neglect. Yet it had emerged strong and capable, demonstrating a level of intelligence and awareness that astonished all who witnessed it. She realized that the foal's survival had not been accidental. It had been guided by instinct, intelligence, and the bond they had formed. And in that realization lay the true lesson. The smallest acts of care and courage could yield results beyond imagination, changing lives in ways that could not be predicted or measured. The town slowly adjusted to the presence of the foal. What had once been gossip and scorn transformed into admiration and wonder. People began to see not only the foal's extraordinary qualities, but also the depth of character and courage in the young woman who had risked everything to save it. Her last $300 had become a symbol of faith and determination, and the foal had become a living testament to what could be achieved through patience, love, and trust. As the days passed, she continued to work with the foal, teaching it to respond to commands, guiding it through the fields, and ensuring it remained healthy and strong. The bond they shared deepened with every interaction, a silent understanding passing between them that needed no words. She realized that the foal's journey had also transformed her own life, sharpening her instincts, strengthening her resolve, and filling her with a sense of purpose that went beyond mere survival. Together they had weathered storms, faced doubt, and emerged stronger, connected by trust and shared experience. Neighbors who had once doubted her began offering assistance, bringing supplies, helping to repair fences, and even volunteering to help with the other animals. The foal became a central figure in the community, drawing attention not for its rarity or potential for profit, but for the inspiration it provided. People learned to value compassion, patience, and courage, seeing firsthand how acts of kindness could ripple outward and transform lives. She watched quietly, heart full, as the town adjusted to this new reality, knowing that the lessons of trust, resilience, and care would endure far beyond the barn. One morning, as sunlight streamed through the barn doors, she watched the foal gallop across the pasture, powerful muscles propelling it effortlessly, ears alert, tail high. Its movements were graceful, confident, and full of life, a striking contrast to the frail creature she had rescued weeks before. She stood silently, letting the moment settle around her, heart swelling with pride and gratitude. The foal had survived, thrived, and revealed its extraordinary nature, and she had been there every step of the way, witnessing a miracle born of compassion and perseverance. She knelt beside it, running her hands through its mane, whispering softly, "We made it." Together, the foal nuzzled her shoulder, a gentle acknowledgement of the bond they shared. Around them, the barnyard hummed with live chickens pecking, goats wandering, and neighbors moving quietly, sharing in the sense of accomplishment and awe. The judgment, skepticism, and fear that had once clouded the town were gone, replaced by respect, admiration, and wonder. In the weeks that followed, the foal continued to thrive, growing stronger, smarter, and more aware. The town came to accept it not just as an animal, but as a symbol of resilience, courage, and the extraordinary outcomes that could arise from a single act of kindness. She reflected on the journey, the struggles, the sleepless nights, and the moments of doubt, realizing that each had been necessary to reach this point. Her last $300 had bought more than a foal. It had bought trust, understanding, and a story that would be remembered for years to come. As she watched the sun set behind the hills, casting long golden shadows across the pasture, she felt a quiet satisfaction settle over her. The foal had survived, the town had learned a lesson in patience and compassion, and the bonds they had formed had transformed not just their own lives, but those around them. She smiled, feeling the warmth of the moment, knowing that the future held promise, hope, and countless possibilities. And as the foal nuzzled her one last time before settling in the soft straw of the barn, she understood something profound. Life, when met with courage and love, could overcome even the harshest trials, and miracles could arise from the simplest acts of kindness. The night fell gently over the barn, peaceful and quiet. She sat beside the foal, hand resting on its soft neck, feeling the steady rhythm of its heartbeat. The town outside was calm, neighbors now speaking in tones of admiration rather than judgment. The journey had tested them both, but in the end, care, courage, and unwavering belief had prevailed. The foal had revealed its true strength, intelligence, and resilience, and the world had finally seen what she had known all along. And as the stars began to twinkle in the sky, she whispered softly, "We did it." "We proved them wrong," and the foal nuzzled her hand in reply. The barn was no longer just a place of survival. It had become a home, a sanctuary, and a testament to what could happen when compassion and courage were allowed to guide the heart. In the quiet of the night, surrounded by the soft sounds of life and the knowledge that the foal's story had only just begun, she felt a peace she had never known, secure in the certainty that their bond, and the lessons it carried, would endure forever.